Good morning, CLC. I invite you in this moment to just take in a nice, deep, cleansing breath, breathing in the cool, calming oxygen that is there for you. And as you release the breath, release all that no longer serves you. Allow any thoughts of yesterday or any concerns about tomorrow, just put them aside for now. If you feel so inclined, go ahead and take another nice, deep, cleansing breath in. And as you release this breath, allow your body to just relax in this moment. And allow your mind to be here now. Universal love enfolds me. Universal wisdom inspires me. Universal spirit enlightens me. Universal power encircles me. I am one, and all is well. As we begin this inner healing process, let me invite you to relax in quiet confidence, opening yourself up to the miracle-working higher power. Now symbolize the unity of your thinking and feeling nature by touching your chest with your hand, and let my words act as your own. For your own inner healing, acceptance, and receptivity. I acknowledge that there is a power, intelligence, and wisdom greater than my own. I am in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of me, sensitive and responsive to my every thought, word, action, and feeling. I now make this true for myself by saying aloud, I acknowledge. Acknowledging this higher power working through my life, I admit that I am personally responsible for solving my own problems, while being guided and assisted by something greater than myself. As I am ready to surrender the conflicts of my ego to the wisdom of this infinite presence, I simply speak these words: I surrender. Knowing that forgiveness is the key to unconditional love and the feeling of heaven, I now unconditionally forgive anyone and everyone who has ever injured me in any way, real or imagined. And I now forgive myself for all of my mistaken judgments and their resulting actions. From my deepest level of understanding, I now say, I forgive. Realizing that I continually experience the effects of my own thinking, I now choose to allow this higher power to recreate me deeply, filling my mind with thoughts that are only positive, constructive, loving, and beautiful. I call upon this divine inflow by stating aloud, I choose. I now center upon that one special idea that I'm willing to accept as real for me in this coming week. visualizing that idea as already acted upon and brought to pass. In seeing my idea become a fact of my experience, I enjoy the happiness and peace of my thought fulfilled and gratefully speak these words: I accept. Knowing that I have an everlasting place in the midst of the power that sustains all creation, as well as the support of all those around me, I allow myself to relax in the peace of fulfillment and gratitude and say, I release. Now, in my mind's eye, I envision the presence of someone near and dear to me. This could be a friend, a family member, a teacher or mentor, someone who has touched my life in deep and loving ways. Someone who may not be physically present in this room or on this planet anymore. I turn to that image in my mind's eye and I say, I'm grateful for the good in your life. Now I open my eyes, turn to the world around me, and joyfully speak to anyone who is physically present in the room or virtually on this broadcast, and share in confidence and gratitude in saying, I am grateful for the good in your lives.
Well, thank you for being here this morning. I know you had a decision to make. You have a decision to make every Sunday, whether to be here at Creative Life or be in some other spiritual center or just blow the whole thing off, you know. But today you had a special decision to make regarding the weather and the fact that you set out from wherever you set out from and you didn't know how it was going to look when you got here. You made it, and that's wonderful, so I honor you for that, and I believe you've made good use of your time. And for those of you watching at home, we caught some of you up Friday night in Philosophy Fridays about what's been going on around here. But we've had some weather. We've had some flooding and things, and we think everybody in our center is all right. And if they're not, I trust you're going to let us know. We didn't quite have the system in place to reach out to everybody like we do during hurricane season, but we've reached out to those that we thought to do so with based on where they live. Anyway, so what I'm doing today, and I'll give you this now rather than in the announcements about what this series is about. Last month was on universal mind. This month is on a containment system for universal mind. Or actually, it's like a cataloging system. You remember card catalogs? And now it's all digitized and stuff. But there's got to be a way to sort through the information in universal mind. And you may recall a few weeks ago I brought up that a student in one of our classes had himself brought up something called set theory and how we accumulate things into sets in consciousness. We make various associations and put things together that way. Well, in the consciousness field that Melody was just singing about, where she said there are many divisions among us, but not in consciousness. In that pure consciousness field where no divisions exist, there are still categorizations of images, symbols, sensations, things that have passed through our personal experience as we got to where we are now. They sort themselves into these categories, and a name for these categories you may be familiar with is archetypes. These are archetypes in consciousness. This is what we're going to be talking about for this month. Archetypes, symbol, metaphor, and so on, as a descriptive device for the deity, for the meaning of all life, and for practical direction going forward. For practical direction going forward in your life, to understand the information that's coming in, is that it's coming in on multiple levels. See, we learn in so many different ways, and we forget this because we've been attuned to and taught to listen to certain levels more acutely than others. We've been taught to listen to language, first and foremost, what people say. Secondarily, a little bit about how they say it, tone, inflection, body language, a little bit about physicality. What does a hug mean? What does a slap mean? What does the withholding of a hug mean? How we interpret the physical way that we bump up against each other. And less importantly, we've been told, were things that could not easily be explained. And I think I brought this up to you last week or the week before, how I was told in school, and perhaps you were too, that if you can't explain something, you don't know it. Which is nonsense, because can you explain love? Can you explain God? Can you explain fear, joy, any of the sensations that we have in life? No. All you can do is report on them. You can't explain them. You can say, well, I felt fear the other day when such and such was happening. You can give a time and date stamp to it, but you can't fully explain it. Furthermore, the situation that you associate with your fear-based feelings to somebody else, they wouldn't feel fear in at all. And so it's all subjective, is what Ernest Holmes and the other New Thought writers tell us. All sensation is subjective. All awareness is subjective. And you can further make the case that because it's subjective, and you're the one who's having these subjective impressions, that your purpose in being here is to interpret reality subjectively in your own way. And as you do that, you feed that information back into the realm of pure consciousness. You feed it back into the all, and so the all gets to know more about itself in a specific kind of way that it already knew in a general kind of way. So, for example, if we say God is love, God knows love, God is busy being love, whatever love means to the person who's saying that. But when you love or I love, God gets to have an experience of love in a precise sort of way that it wouldn't have had if we weren't doing that. And you can't have enough people loving. You can't have enough beings loving. But not all beings, not all life loves the way humans do, loves the way you do and I do, right? Trees love. Trees are embodiment of love, but how they love is a mystery to us. We see them as inanimate, or we know they're living things, but they don't communicate. They don't communicate using language, do they? They don't communicate in the ways that we've been taught to listen to. So we say, well, they're just there. You know, they're kind of props and sets and things for life. And even the animal world around us, we see them communicating with each other, and they have kind of a social network thing going on, and systems and hierarchies and all of this, but they don't talk about it that much. And when they do, we don't understand their language. And we freak out in science when studying the great apes or studying dolphins, for example, like John Lilly did, who I read a lot of a long time ago. When they come out and say, well, we found that these species do in fact have a fairly wide repertoire of symbols. They do in fact have a language, and they have emotions. We're like, oh my gosh, we're not alone here. Well, we've never been alone here, but it sometimes takes science to show it to us, you know. We ask, is there life on other worlds? And so often what we mean by that is there human life on other worlds? And there's a real short answer to that. No. Not a chance. Is there human life on other? But there's life out everywhere we see is alive, because it's filled with atoms and clumped together into molecules and so on. And so there's life. So then is there intelligent life? So, how do you measure intelligence? We measure intelligence if the thing talks back to us, explains itself, you know. So we've been overly literal. We've been taught in overly literal ways. And one of the people who said this profoundly into the culture around 40 years ago was a guy named Joseph Campbell. one of many, and I commend him to you. And we have a bunch of his books in the bookstore that we arranged in a little display for you if you'd like to read more about Joseph Campbell's thinking. But read it slow. It's not exactly self-help material. It might not put more money in your pocket or more friends in your feed, right, at least right away, but it will blow your mind wide open. The things he has to say about how consciousness works. One of the things that I sat with pretty much all week was when he said, we have this hubris, we have this arrogance, we people, to think that what we believe about God is what God believes about itself. And I sat back and I thought about that, and I thought, yeah. And here I've made a living all these years, getting up and telling a room full of people, here's what God is, and it's not this, it's more like that. And it's like, how do I know? How do I know? Well, it's my subjective experience. It's my subjective experience. But I need to back off a little bit, I realize, because I don't know. I don't know exactly what the great mystery is, beyond that it's the great mystery. Except, wait, it does have certain characteristics. It has certain consistencies. Look, it's like you and me as people. We're bigger than we can explain. We're bigger than anybody can explain, but we have certain consistent behavior that our families and friends count on. We suit up and we show up, and, tomorrow morning, we're more or less the same person we were tonight. Well, it's the same thing with the deity and how the deity operates. It's got certain principles. They're not hard and fast laws exactly, but it's got certain tendencies and ways of coming across. And one of these is called cause and effect. One of these that was being discussed in the group on Friday night is growth. That all things seem to grow, all things seem to multiply. If left to their own devices, they'll grow and they'll increase and they'll change. We say, well, that's, even a broader law there is the law of change. Everything changes. Nothing stays the same as it was, except it's still basically recognizable as how it was. Otherwise, we give it what? A new name. We use language. This is why in the stages of life we'll say, well, that's a child. See, that right there is a child. Now over here is a what? Adolescent. And then over here is an adult. A child, adolescent, adult. When exactly does the child stop being a child and start being an adolescent? Well, we have a story that we tell, 12, 13, something like that. We categorize these things. When does the adolescent stop being that and start being the adult? And we have a number there too. Except, here's the tricky part. The adult has the adolescent within them. The adolescent has the child within them. And the person who's 110 years old has all of these within them. And not only all of these different ages of themselves, but they have all the ages that anybody's ever been. They have all the information that anybody's ever had. It's just not sorted out, and it's just not applied necessarily, but it's there. We live in the midst of infinite wisdom, and that means it's right within us, right where we are, seeking to communicate itself to us for our expansion, for our growth. We grow, and there is kind of an owner's manual to it. It says the same basic principles of love and compassion that work for this one there and that one here, and the saints and the heroes and the Nobel Prize winners and all of this, those same principles work effectively for you at your job in your home today. Doing what you do today, those same principles apply. So this is how the information clumps itself together into sets, to delivery systems of sets of awareness through archetypal images. And archetypes break down into metaphor. The movie, she's not here today, but there's one of our number who I shall not name to the camera who, when often in a talk I would say it's a metaphor, would say from the seats, it's a metaphor. Because that's a line from a movie, The Fault in Our Stars. You can check it out. There's a clip of it on YouTube. You can find out where these things. This is so handy. You never used to know where stuff came from unless you were there and seen the movie. Now you can just Google it, and boom, there it is. Anyway, it's a metaphor. So what is metaphor? We live in metaphor. We live in metaphor rather than literality. And nowhere is metaphor more useful than when discussing the nature of God. Because many of us have been taught that God is a literal something and not a something else. God looks like this. God is male. God sits in heaven. God judges. Doesn't want to, but you made him. Okay? Through your disobedience or the disobedience of your ancestors way back at the very beginning of all of this, you know. And it makes him sad to see the way you live, and he's hoping you'll change your ways. And we've made God into a parent. Now, this is, this is tricky here because next week is Mother's Day, and we're going to talk about the creatrix, the feminine aspect of creation through the great mother. We'll say, well, I thought we're saying God isn't a mother, God isn't a father, God isn't a parent. Yes, it is. But it's not only that. It's not only that. That's the thing, you see. It's way more than that. It's the vast mystery, and one of the metaphorical structures through which it occurs is the parental role. That's a metaphorical structure that we all understand because we've all had some kind of parents. We've perhaps been parents ourselves, you know, and it happens there. And it's in our songs and literature and poetry and all the rest of this, mom, dad, this. So it's familiar to us. We've also had kings and queens. If you go long enough back, we don't in this country, but, you know, until fairly recently, it was a big deal in the world. So when you make God into a king or a queen, a lot of people nod and they understand. Well, it can be that. It can be the king of all creation if you want it to be, because it's contained within an infinite set of boundaries, if you will. But it's not only that. So every time we say, well, this is not it, this is not it, we're denying something of it to our own loss. We're missing out on something of it. It is absolutely everything. The best explanation I've heard for metaphor is this. You create a structure, you create kind of a template, and then you lose the template. Once you have something in place, you lose the template. So I might say to you, and I don't know where I got this, but I think it's pretty good. I might say to you, I run really fast. I can run really fast. I can run like the wind. I can run like the wind. Actually, there was a time when I sort of could, but I can run like the wind is a simile. You know this from English class, right? If it's got like or as in it, it's a simile. But if you say, I am the wind, that's a metaphor. I am the wind. And if you go around announcing this to people, using language, they're not going to know what you're talking about. I am the wind. They're going to say, you're very spacey and strange today, and, you know, or it sounds vaguely archaic. It sounds sort of old, indigenous, tribal kind of thing, which it really is, because in those days, in those places, they communicated largely in metaphor. Now, if you are saying that you are the wind to a person or a group of people who understand that by wind you mean speedy, then they're going to get it. They're going to get what you're communicating. They might argue with you about it, but they're going to understand the metaphor. They're going to live inside the metaphor with you. And if they don't, of course, it's lost on them. And so they're going to write down, Jesse thinks he's the wind. Just so. And then maybe that gets passed down for generations, and it looks like lunacy, you know. If you read in our sacred scriptures, which I hope you will, because that's why they're called sacred scriptures. There's a lot of interesting stuff in there. You see a lot of these passages that are metaphorical. They're clearly metaphorical, because if they're literal, they're just bogus. They just don't make a lot of sense. Methuselah was, 900 years old? Why? No, what it's saying is Methuselah was a really old person, or Methuselah was had a really rich experience of life, a deep experience of life. They were well experienced in their process. Like we talk about old souls, you know, that kind of thing. When they say Goliath was 9 or 10 feet, however many cubits, 9 or 10 feet high, You say, how is this possible? There's never been a human that tall. The tallest human was almost 8 feet, I think, Andre the Giant or somebody. So how is this possible? Well, all it's trying to communicate is that Goliath was a really dominant figure and posed quite a threat to the landscape, and how David, by comparison, was tiny and yet had faith. And you get the idea here, see? So what the ancients did, and that's just in the Semitic culture, is that they blew up numbers, exaggerated to make a point metaphorically about how things are. So if you begin to swim through the metaphors of the world, you start to see something interesting. You notice patterns emerging. And in these patterns, you see that there's information, and it's been contained there the whole time, that when looked at literally could not be seen. And you can try this at home, and this is what I want to recommend to you to do, is to try this at home, is to look around at things and say, what else could this be? What else could this mean? What else could this hold? The pen is mightier than the sword. I've got a pen right over there on the table. I was using it up until just a few minutes ago. The pen is mightier than the sword. Is that true? Of course not. A sword is big and metal, and it will slice things up. And a pen is little and plastic and has a spring in it, unless you're not speaking literally. Unless you're speaking about the pen as something that stimulates thought, opens conversation, and persuades the culture in a certain way. Whereas all the sword can be used to do is kill things. Well then, yes, that which sustains, that which opens and creates a context for growth is always going to be greater. But you have to look at it metaphorically to see it that way. So this is the power that we have within us. And this, why I bring this up, is because when we're looking for information from infinite wisdom, very often we think it's about people, places, and things only. We think in a literal kind of way. In other words, if God talks to me, God's going to tell me what to do next. And sometimes you want that, and that can certainly happen. But it's not the only thing that can happen. Because very often what we're looking for in life is a context in which to operate, not simply next steps. But what is the context in which I hold my life? Who am I? Who am I? And the purpose of metaphor, and the purpose of the archetypal structures of metaphor, and the purpose of spiritual psychology generally, is for each one of us to figure out who we are. Along the way of that, and this is described in Jesus' wonderful statement, I'll give you in a second, but along the way that there are prizes, there are benefits, if you're wondering, to discovering more of who you are. How Jesus put it was, seek you first the kingdom, metaphor, of God and its righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Very often what we want is we want all this stuff added unto us first. Let's get what's behind the curtain. How can I thrive? How can I money, oh, that'd be great. Friend, power would be authority. I want authority. I want dominion. We talked about this on Earth Day. I want dominion over the earth, No, that's not how it works. First, you know who you are. Then you get what you get out of knowing who you are. Because your motives shape your template through which you perceive, the filters through which you perceive incoming information. The motives and intentions and the heart always shape the conversation. So that's where we work, primarily in this teaching, in any spiritual teaching. In any spiritual teaching, including the ones who've never heard of everything I just said. Everybody is working on knowing exactly who they are. Our Christian friends call that state grace, a state of grace. Yes, it's a state of being free from sin in a literal way. In a metaphorical way, it's a state of being free from the desire to commit sin. Right? It's a way of being aware of motives and intentions and ambitions and what drives us in a certain way. To know that is the greatest prize you could possibly have. You know what it brings with it? Does it bring cash money? Does it bring lots of friends? Does it bring lots of power? It could. But what it absolutely brings is peace of mind. And that right there is better than all of it. And if you want to know for sure, ask anybody who's accumulated money, power, prestige, these kinds of things. Ask them, well, do you have peace in your heart? And if they look kind of twitchy when you ask them that, they'll tell you, no. They went for the graven image. They went for the golden calf instead of the experience of the Almighty. We can have it better than we thought when we go into the heart of the Almighty through the metaphorical process. So what I want to I have more for you, but I don't want to keep you too long because I don't know when the weather's coming back. And plus, there's always next week. That's one wonderful thing about creative life and places like it. There's always next week to pick up the conversation again. But what I'd like to encourage you to do in the week to come, and I think you'll find time to do it because it's enjoyable. It's not like go home and do push-ups, right? Or, go home and eat cauliflower or something. Oh, God, I love that. You remember that meme that went up? If cauliflower can be pizza, you can be anything. I just love that. But anyway, try this at home, is to look at things in your life, objects, situations in which you find yourself, the dreams and plans that you have, and ask yourself, what else could this be? What else could this be? What else could this be? You'll hear people say sometimes, well, I believe in God. I'm not a big fan of Allah. Allah is Arabic for God. What else could this be? It's the same thing. It's a different language. It's a different term. It's also Dieu. Do you have a problem with Dieu? Do you have a problem with Dios? Do you have a problem with Gott? Do you have a problem? Well, go into your translation app on your phone. I know you have one. And enter God or enter the word divine, and see what all comes up. And it's all describing the same thing. So what else could it be? You know what you'll find in there? Languages you've never heard of. Languages that come from countries possibly you've never heard of. That still these people in those countries have a descriptive term for the same power that you visit every time you close your eyes, every time you think, every time you go into consciousness. What else could it be? What else could it be? And let it speak to you and sing. And the upshot of this, which I'll get more into next week, is that you will stand in awe before all creation. You will stand in awe before it. It won't have anything necessarily to do to benefit you. You won't need it to do anything. It'll be like a sunset or a waterfall of the Grand Canyon. You just stand there and you look at it and you go, wow, same mind made that, made me. How about that? Same mind made that, same mind I use. Let's know together, one power, one presence, pure spirit, everywhere manifesting. And today I'm going to speak a specific word along certain lines, knowing that everyone in our part of the area, southeast Texas, is safe and dry and protected. Whatever is needed is moving to wherever each person is. There's a power that knows where each person is, knows what they need, is busy providing it. I claim that the rains come in easy, gentle, rhythmic ways to saturate the ground just enough. I claim that there's a balance in climate, not only here where we are, in this room, in this community, but across the planet. I claim further, because I can, place this claim on the infinite to express itself in a variety of ways. I claim that there is good for all, that we live in a world that does work for everyone, that there's ample supplies of whatever is needed at any point. Most of all, love, compassion, concern, and grace. I know this. I feel it. I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't need to know how it's going to happen. I'm not in charge of that. But having spoken this word, I know there is a law, there is a principle that takes this word and runs with it and does what ought to be done. And for that right there, I am so deeply grateful. So I release this word now into that law to get busy doing it. And so it is.
It was not on, right? Say everything again. Everything again. I just said everything again. I was saying that if you eat too much cabbage, I am the wind may take on a different experience. Yeah, Reverend Lisa just covered her eyes. I know it's related to my. Oh, just one quick word, actually. Malta, as probably most of you know, it's an island in the Mediterranean. It's like almost 100% Christian, Catholic. And the word in Maltese for God is Allah. Yep. Which kind of underscores what Jesse was saying. So come back next week once again for the Creatrix then and now, and which is another way of looking at creation. And if you come in our when you come physically into our center, you'll see that all around the building here, we have symbols of lots of the world's religions, which each of them have got a different creation story, which all eventually meet in the middle. And as we come up to giving time, I just want you to remember this. If you like what we teach here, please pass it on to other people and then ask them to pass it on, because we're not here to teach you what to believe. Our job is simply to teach you how to believe and how to make the world a better place. And if that's really important to you, which I guess it is if you're here in person or online, please support us with your contributions, because that's our mission in life. And also, on a more practical level, if you need help because of these current floods, let us know. In the last big flood, we had people physically out there cleaning out people's homes and helping them get back on their feet again. So we're here for prayer support, but we're also here for physical support when things like this happen. So please now say it together with me. Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive. I am prosperous now, and so it is.
Now, as I was getting ready to get up here, Danielle leaned over and said, I don't think anybody mentioned it's Cinco de Mayo. So it is Cinco de Mayo. I've already seen the mayo in the sink meme this morning. And then yesterday was May 4th. If you are a geek, we spent all day saying, may the 4th be with you. May the force be with you. Which, by the way, if you ever, there's some interview with not Joseph Campbell, George Lucas. And in the background, there are two books that you can see, one of which being The Hero with 1,000 Faces, which is Joseph Campbell, and the other one being the Science of Mind textbook. So there's some, inspiration there. And I always love May 4th because you can always tell somebody's got, Catholic, Lutheran, Episcopalian, I think, because you say, may the 4th be with you, and they say, and also with you. We can't help it. It's ingrained in us. So, all right. That's just my tease for the day. So may the 4th be with you. And then there's also, you'll either hear it, because I am a Star Wars child. Like, it's one of the first movies I remember seeing, especially I saw it in a drive-in. It's like, it may literally be the first movie I remember seeing is Star Wars. They also, and they'll either do Revenge of the Sith, or they'll do it for the 6th also. So you're kind of stuck with the Star Wars geeks for about 3 days in May. It's a good place to be. We're good people. All right. Okay. Now, my other responsibility is to turn you loose out into the world. And the way I'm going to do that is by inviting you to consciously enter into the sacred with me now. It's all sacred all the time. All right? I've been seeing the meme, how do you alchemize a soulless world? It's by treating everything as if it's sacred until it remembers that it is. And so that is what we do here. That is what we do here. We remind you it is all sacred, all the time. So consciously enter into the sacred with me now and know that there is one life, one power, one presence, one love, and that each and every one of us are vessels of that presence. We are channels of that power. We are channels of that love. And when we remember that, anything is possible. Anything at all. It's even in the word, I'm possible. So, it is a call to remember who you are. You are a beloved expression of the divine. That divine power is walking around as you. We are literally stars wrapped in skin. And it is up to us to let our light shine. And when we shine, amazing things happen. Love is infinite. Presence is always. And you are a beloved expression of that. And we are called to share that, especially in the moments that we don't feel like it. Remember who you are. Remember who you are. And I'm grateful to know this. I am grateful with all of the gratitude in my being. I am grateful for a teaching that teaches me who I am. I am grateful for the teaching that teaches me who you are. And I am grateful for a community that comes together to remind each other, always. I am grateful for our ministers, our practitioners, our musicians, because we got some really good ones. I am grateful for each and every one of you. I am grateful for the technology that allows us to send this out into the ethers. And I am grateful because it is another word for love. And so I relax and I release my word with love into the law, knowing that it is done even as I speak these words. And so it is.
Say with me now, something wonderful is happening through me.
Something wonderful is happening through me.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my mind.
I feel it in my mind.
I feel it in everything I am.
I feel it in everything I am.
I choose it.
I choose it.
I trust it.
I trust it.
I use it.
I use it.
And I love it.
And I love it.
So it is.
And so it is. Thank you for holding hands with me. I'll say it.